There is a version of Starbucks that lives in your head, and it is a beautiful place. It smells like roasted beans and steamed milk. A friendly barista knows your name and writes it on the cup, sometimes spelled correctly. Soft jazz plays. There are worn leather armchairs and reclaimed wood tables, and people with laptops nursing a single drink for 3 hours, and nobody minds. It is your office away from the office, your living room away from the living room. Howard Schultz called it the third place, the space that is neither home nor work, and for a while that phrase was the entire pitch. You are not buying coffee. You are buying a seat at the good table, a small daily luxury you can actually afford, a $4 reward for surviving your own morning. And then you look at the receipt. $7. $7 for a grande oat-milk latte with an extra shot and a pump of vanilla. $7 for a drink that is mostly water and milk, made by a 19-year-old in under 90 seconds, from beans that cost the company a few cents. And the strangest part is that you will pay it again tomorrow. You will pay it 4 times a week. You will pay it while telling yourself you are cutting back. That is not an accident. And it is not because the coffee is that good. The coffee, honestly, is fine. What you are actually paying for is a machine, and the machine is one of the most quietly brilliant money extraction systems ever attached to a paper cup. Here is the number that breaks the romance. The coffee itself, the actual roasted beans in your cup, cost Starbucks somewhere in the neighborhood of 20 to 30 cents. The espresso in a latte, a few pennies more. The single most expensive thing in your $7 drink is not the coffee. It is the milk. Then it is the cup, the lid, the sleeve, and the straw. Then it is the 11 or 12 minutes of a barista's wage spread across the drinks they make in an hour. And towering over all of it, larger than beans and milk and labor combined, is the rent. You are not buying a coffee. You are renting a corner of an intersection for the 90 seconds it takes to hand you a cup. And the coffee is the excuse that makes the rent feel like a treat. Once you see that, the whole business rearranges itself in front of you. Starbucks is not a coffee company that happens to own real estate. It is a real estate and consumer finance operation that happens to sell coffee as the cover story. Let me show you the machine piece by piece, and by the end, the $7 will make a kind of terrible sense. Start with what it costs to even open one of these. A single new Starbucks store in the United States runs the company somewhere between $400,000 and $700,000 to build out. That is the espresso machines, the refrigeration, the counters, the seating, the drive-through lane if it has one. The signage, the permits, the plumbing pulled to a specific corner of a specific building. Notice the word build out. Starbucks does not usually own the building. It signs a lease, often a 10-year lease, on a location chosen not by vibe but by data. The company runs some of the most sophisticated site selection analytics in retail. Foot traffic, commute patterns, the median income within a 3-minute drive, the direction people turn out of the parking lot, whether the morning sun hits the drive-through window. They are not looking for a nice spot. They are looking for a spot that guarantees a specific volume of specific people at a specific time of day. And that reveals the first thing nobody counts when they imagine owning a coffee shop. The rent is not the price of the room. The rent is the price of the traffic. A corner that generates 800 transactions a day is worth 10 times a quiet street that generates 80, even if the two spaces are the same square footage. Starbucks pays enormous rent, sometimes 15 or 20% of a store's revenue, and it pays it gladly because it is not renting space. It is renting a fire hose of predictable human beings walking past at 8 in the morning with a craving they have been trained to have. The independent cafe down the street pays less rent and thinks it is winning. It is not. It is paying less because it is standing in a slower part of the river. Now, labor. A barista in the United States costs the company somewhere between $15 and $25 an hour all in. Once you count wages, payroll taxes, and the benefits Starbucks genuinely does offer, including healthcare and, famously, college tuition assistance. That sounds generous, and in retail terms it is. But look at what it buys. A well-run Starbucks during a morning rush can produce hundreds of drinks an hour across a handful of workers. Spread the wage across that volume, and the labor cost of your individual latte is well under $1. The benefits are not charity, they are a retention strategy. Every barista who quits costs thousands of dollars to replace and retrain, and a slow, confused line during the morning rush is lost revenue that never comes back. Paying people slightly better than the cafe down the street is not kindness. It is throughput insurance. There is one more thing about the beans worth knowing because it explains why the coffee itself almost never moves the price. Coffee is a traded commodity, and its wholesale price swings wildly, doubling in a bad harvest year, collapsing in a good one. A small cafe feels every one of those swings because beans are a huge share of its costs. Starbucks barely feels them at all for two reasons. First, beans are a tiny fraction of the price of a finished drink, so even a doubling of the bean price adds only cents to a cup. Second, the company buys coffee years forward, locking in prices through contracts and hedging, smoothing out the swings that wreck smaller operators. So when Starbucks raises prices, and it does most years, it is almost never because coffee got more expensive. It is because it can. The commodity is the excuse, not the reason. And the cup is not the only place the beans get sold. Walk into any grocery store and you will find Starbucks bags, Starbucks pods, bottled Starbucks Frappuccinos in the cooler. All of it sold through a packaged goods machine that runs in parallel to the cafes. Much of that business is licensed, meaning another company handles the manufacturing and shelving and pays Starbucks for the name on the label. That is almost pure margin, a royalty on the brand itself, with no store to build and no barista to pay. The Green Mermaid earns money in the grocery aisle while you sleep, and most customers never connect the bag on the shelf to the $7 cup downtown. They are the same machine, monetizing the same brand at two completely different price points. So add it up. Beans, milk, cup, labor, and a slice of rent, and a typical Starbucks drink cost the company well under $2 to make and serve, sitting in a store that sells it for 4, 5, 6, 7. The gross margin on a cup of coffee is enormous, one of the best in all of food service. But here is where most people stop, and here is where they get the business completely wrong. They think the margin on the drink is the trick. It is not. The margin on the drink is just table stakes. The real machine is somewhere else entirely, and it does not look like coffee at all. Let me show you the engine. It is called the app. Open the Starbucks app, and you are looking at one of the most successful pieces of consumer finance in the country, disguised as a way to order a pumpkin spice latte. When you load money onto that app or onto a Starbucks gift card, you hand the company cash today for coffee you will drink later. Sometimes much later. Sometimes never. At any given moment, Starbucks is sitting on well over $1 billion of customer money that has been paid in but not yet spent. Some years that stored value balance has run past $2 billion. That is money you gave them in advance for a product they have not delivered, and on which they pay you exactly 0% interest. Think about what that actually is. A bank pays you interest to hold your deposit. Starbucks holds your deposit, pays you nothing, and gets to use the float in the meantime. It is an interest-free loan from millions of customers, replenished every single day, that never has to be paid back in cash. Only in coffee that costs pennies to produce. If you or I tried to run a business like that, we would need a banking license. Starbucks does it with a phone app and a picture of a green mermaid. And it gets better from their side of the counter. Not all of that loaded money ever gets spent. People lose gift cards. They forget about $4 left on a balance. They abandon the app. That unredeemed money is called breakage, and after a while, accounting rules let the company simply recognize it as revenue. Pure revenue. No coffee made, no milk poured, no barista paid. Starbucks books somewhere in the range of $150 to $200 million a year in breakage alone. That is not the profit on coffee. That is the profit on coffee that will never exist, paid for by customers who will never drink it. The app does a second thing, and it might be more valuable than the float. It watches you. Every order, every time of day, every store, every customization, every drink you almost bought and did not. Starbucks knows that you get a cold brew on Tuesdays and a flat white on Fridays, that you always add the second shot in winter, that you have not been in for 9 days and are statistically about to lapse. And so the app sends you a personalized offer at the exact moment the data says you are wobbling. Double stars today? A free drink if you come in 3 times this week. The reward is not generosity. It is a precision instrument for changing your behavior, tested and tuned across tens of millions of members. And it works well enough that the loyalty program now drives a majority of the company's US sales. That is the loop. You load money in advance, which they use for free. You come back more often because the app nudges you. You spend more per visit because the rewards are structured to push you toward the higher margin drinks. and a slice of what you load you never even claim. It is a closed system designed to capture your cash early, your habits permanently, and your forgotten balances entirely. Now let me show you the part of the machine that touches you most directly every time you order, and that most people never notice. The menu itself is a pricing instrument. A plain brewed coffee at Starbucks is cheap, deliberately. It is the anchor, the honest-looking number that tells your brain, this is a reasonable place. But almost nobody walks out with a plain brewed coffee, and the menu is built to make sure of it. Every step up from that anchor is engineered for margin. Go from drip to a latte and you have added steamed milk and espresso, but you have roughly doubled the price for ingredients that cost the company well under $1 more. Add a flavored syrup and you pay another 50 or 75 cents for a pump of sweetened water that costs single-digit cents. Swap dairy for oat or almond milk and you pay a surcharge that dwarfs the actual difference in what the alternative milk costs them. Add an extra shot, more margin. Make it a venti, and the jump from a grande to the largest size adds far more to the price than it adds to the company's cost. Because the extra volume is mostly milk, ice, and water. This is textbook price discrimination, and it is beautiful in its efficiency. The customer who just wants caffeine pays a little. The customer who wants a treat, a customized, indulgent, personal little ritual, sorts themselves into paying a lot, and does it happily because every add-on feels like a choice they made rather than a price they were charged. The size names do quiet work too. There is no small. The smallest cup is called a tall, which is a word that means big. And by the time you have been nudged from tall to grande to venti, you are anchored so far from small that the large feels normal. You did not get upsold. You feel like you customized. That feeling is the product. And the physical store is tuned to the same purpose. The layout, the lighting, the smell, the music, even the deliberate little wait between ordering and receiving, all of it is engineered. The espresso machines were once lowered in height so customers could see the barista work, turning the wait into theater. The pastry case sits exactly where your eyes land while you stand in line with nothing to do but want things. The Wi-Fi is free and the seats are comfortable because a customer who lingers is a customer who buys a second drink. And a store that always has people in it signals to the street that this is where people go. The third place is real, but it is not a gift. It is a conversion funnel with armchairs, so the machine is elegant. But elegant machines still break, and it is worth being honest about what actually threatens this one, because the same forces that make Starbucks powerful can turn on it fast. The first trap is the one built into the loyalty engine itself. When a majority of your sales run through an app that trains customers to wait for deals, you slowly teach an entire base of people never to pay full price. Discounts that started as a nudge become an expectation. The morning regular who used to buy on autopilot now checks the app first and only comes in on double star days. The company has to keep feeding the reward machine just to hold the traffic it already has, and every star it gives away is margin it used to keep. The float and the data are real advantages, but they are rented, and the rent is a permanent discount to your most loyal customers. The second trap is throughput, and it is the one that quietly strangles stores that look successful on paper. Starbucks makes its money in a narrow window, the morning rush, and everything depends on moving that line fast. But the same app that drives loyalty also floods the store with mobile orders, and mobile orders do not queue politely. They arrive in bursts, jamming the handoff counter, overwhelming baristas who are also serving the in-store line and the drive-thru at the same time. When the line feels slow, the most valuable customers, the rushed commuters, simply stop coming, and they do not tell you why. A store can be selling more drinks than ever and still be bleeding its best customers because the experience of getting a drink got worse. Complexity, the very customization that drives the margin, is also what clogs the machine. The third trap is the real estate itself, the thing that made the whole model work. Those long, expensive leases are a bet on a pattern of human movement, and the pattern can change. When commuting collapses, when a downtown empties out, when the office nearby goes remote, the fire hose of predictable morning traffic simply turns off. And the store is still bound to a 10-year lease priced for a river that is no longer flowing. Rent that was 15% of revenue becomes 25, then 30, and a location that was a machine for making money becomes a machine for losing it. One that cannot be switched off without paying to break the lease. The strength of the model, paying up for traffic, is also its fragility. You are long-term committed to a short-term prediction about where people walk. And there is a fourth, slower trap, which is the ceiling on the story itself. Starbucks grew by opening more stores, and for decades that worked. But at some point, you have a store on every corner that can support one, and new locations start stealing customers from your own existing ones instead of finding new ones. The company runs out of great intersections and starts settling for good ones, then mediocre ones. Growth that came from new stores has to come from selling more to the same people, which means more add-ons, more app nudges, more price increases, until one day a customer looks at a $7 latte and, for the first time, decides it is not worth it. The whole machine runs on the belief that the small daily luxury is still a luxury and still small. Push the price far enough and it stops being either. So picture two versions of the same store on the same corner 10 years from now. In the first version, the machine keeps working. The morning traffic holds because the neighborhood stays dense and busy. The app keeps the regulars loyal without training them into pure discount hunters because the rewards are tuned carefully enough to feel like a bonus rather than a right. The store solves its throughput problem, separates the mobile order chaos from the in-store line, keeps the wait short, keeps the theater intact. The rent stays a reasonable share of a rising revenue because the site was chosen well and the traffic showed up. The float keeps growing, the breakage keeps flowing, the margins on milk and syrup and oat and extra shots keep doing the quiet, heavy lifting. And the $7 latte still feels, to the person buying it, like the cheapest nice thing they will do all day. That store is a money machine, and it barely looks like one because the coffee was never the point. In the second version, every trap closes at once. The neighborhood thins out, and the traffic the lease was priced for never fully returns. The regulars have been trained to wait for double-star days, and the store is now discounting its best customers just to keep them. Mobile orders jam the counter every morning, and the commuters who used to be the whole business quietly drift to the faster place next door. And the price, nudged up year after year to keep growth alive, finally crosses the line in enough heads at once that the daily ritual becomes an occasional treat, then a thing people used to do. The rent does not care. The lease does not flex. And a store that looked, on a spreadsheet, like it was selling more coffee than ever, closes anyway because the machine underneath the coffee stopped turning. That is the real economics of Starbucks. Not the beans, which are almost free, not the drink, which is mostly milk and rent. The business is a float you fund for nothing, a data engine that knows you better than you know your own habits. A menu engineered to sort you into the highest price you will tolerate. Sitting inside a piece of real estate chosen by an algorithm to catch you at your weakest, most caffeine-hungry moment of the day. The $7 is not the price of a coffee. It is the price of admission